The stars looked different from the bridge of the righteous dawn. Captain Tejo stood with his hands behind his back, watching the blue planet grow larger on the viewing screen. Nova Sol, the colony world that Earth had built 150 years ago. Now he was here to inspect it, to make sure everything followed Earth's rules. "Captain, we're getting their signal," said Bora, the young officer at the communication station. She was good at her job, always sharp and alert. "Governor Misun wants to speak with you." Tejo nodded. "Put her through." The screen changed. A woman appeared, her face calm but cold. Misun wore the official governor's uniform, but something about her expression made Tejo uncomfortable. She looked at him like he was an unwanted guest. "Captain Tejo, welcome to Nova Sol. Your inspection team may land at the main spaceport. We have prepared the required documents." Her voice was flat, without warmth. "Thank you, Governor. We appreciate your cooperation," Tejo replied, keeping his tone professional. The screen went dark. Bora turned in her chair. "Sir, did that seem strange to you?" She didn't sound very friendly. Tejo had thought the same thing, but he didn't say it out loud. "We're here to do a job, Officer Bora. Personal feelings don't matter." 2 hours later, Tejo and his inspection team walked through the streets of New Busan, the capital city of Nova Sol. The planet was beautiful. Clean air, tall buildings made of some kind of shining metal, and people everywhere looking healthy and prosperous. This colony had done well for itself. Too well, maybe. They reached the governor's office, a huge building in the center of the city. Misun met them personally, which was unusual. Governors usually sent assistants for these things. "Follow me," she said. "I'll show you our mining operations first, then our trade records." The inspection took 6 hours. Tejo's team checked everything, the mining equipment, the shipping logs, the tax payments to Earth. Everything looked correct on the surface. But Tejo had been doing this job for 15 years. He knew when something was wrong. It was Bora who found it. She was going through the computer files when she noticed something odd. "Captain, come look at this." Tejo leaned over her shoulder. On the screen were payment records, but they weren't payments to Earth. They were payments to the Vrelian Confederacy. Huge amounts of money. "What are they buying from the Vrelians?" Tejo asked quietly. Bora typed faster, her fingers flying across the keyboard. More files appeared: weapons, shield generators, military-grade equipment that colonies weren't allowed to have. And there was more. Trade agreements, political treaties, things that only Earth was supposed to negotiate. "Governor Misun," Tejo called out. His voice echoed in the large office. "We need to talk now." Misun walked in slowly. She didn't look surprised or worried. "You found the Vrelian contracts. You're buying weapons. You're making political deals without Earth's permission. Do you understand how serious this is?" Tejo felt his heart beating faster. This wasn't just a rule violation. This was preparation for something bigger. Misun smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Captain, let me be honest with you. Nova Sol is done taking orders from Earth. We've been loyal for 150 years. We've mined the rare elements. We've sent Earth 60% of everything we make. And what do we get? Nothing. No protection. No voice in decisions. No respect." "You're talking about rebellion," Tejo said quietly. "I'm talking about independence." Misun pressed a button on her desk. Suddenly, alarms started ringing all over the city. "As of this moment, Nova Sol is a free world. We no longer recognize Earth's authority." Tejo grabbed his communicator. "Dawn, this is the captain. Emergency extraction, now." But Bora was shaking her head, looking at her portable scanner. "Sir, they've activated an orbital defense grid. We're trapped. The ship can't get through." On the viewing screens around the office, Tejo could see it. Hundreds of weapons platforms had appeared in orbit around Nova Sol. They surrounded his ship like a cage. Misun walked to the window, looking out at her city. "I don't want to kill you or your crew, Captain. You have 24 hours to leave. After that, if your ship is still in our space, we'll destroy it. Earth will send a fleet," Tejo said. "You can't win this." "Maybe. Maybe not." Misun turned to face him. "But we're not alone. 12 other colonies are watching right now. If we succeed, they'll join us. Earth is spread too thin. You control 200 worlds, but you can't fight a war on every one of them." Tejo felt cold. This wasn't just one colony rebelling. This was the start of something that could tear humanity apart. "You're making a terrible mistake," he said. "No, Captain. Earth made the mistake. They thought they could control us forever. They forgot that we're human too. We want to choose our own future. Taeho and his team were escorted back to their shuttle. All around them, people in the streets were celebrating. They waved flags with a new symbol, not Earth's flag. They cheered and sang. They thought they were free. Getting back to the ship was dangerous. Taeho had to use every trick he knew. He shut down the main engines and used only the small positioning thrusters, making the Righteous Dawn drift like a piece of space junk. The defense grid tracked them but didn't fire. They slipped through a gap in the coverage, moving slowly, barely breathing. But it wasn't perfect. One of the weapons platforms detected them at the last second. It fired. The blast hit the ship's lower deck. Taeho felt the impact shake everything. Alarms screamed. The lights flickered. "Damage report," he shouted. "Lower deck destroyed, sir." 40 crew members were there. They're gone. Bora's voice broke. 40 people. 40 good people who were just doing their jobs. Dead because one colony wanted independence. Taeho pushed the engines as hard as they could go. The ship jumped into faster-than-light speed, leaving Nova Sol behind. But the image stayed in his mind. The blue planet, the celebrating crowds, the governor who thought she could defy Earth and win. 5 days later, the Righteous Dawn arrived at Earth. Taeho went straight to the military headquarters in Geneva. He had to report what he'd seen. He had to tell them that everything was about to change. Admiral Dong Hyun listened to his report without speaking. When Taeho finished, the admiral stood and walked to a window overlooking Lake Geneva. "One colony," Dong Hyun said quietly. "One colony and the whole empire could fall apart." "What are we going to do, sir?" Taeho asked. Dong Hyun turned around. His face was hard like stone. "Whatever is necessary, Captain." "Whatever is necessary." Taeho didn't like the sound of that, but he was a soldier. He would follow orders, even if those orders led somewhere dark. The meeting room in Geneva was filled with the most powerful people in human space. Admiral Dong Hyun sat at the head of the table, his uniform perfect, his expression showing nothing. Around him sat generals, politicians, and intelligence officers. They were all looking at the hologram in the center of the table. Nova Sol, spinning slowly, blue and beautiful, and rebellious. "The situation is simple," Dong Hyun said. "If Nova Sol succeeds, we lose everything. Already we're getting reports from other colonies. They're asking questions, they're holding meetings. Some are even talking openly about independence." A general spoke up. "We should send the fleet immediately. Show them what happens when you defy Earth." "And if we do that," said another officer, "we might push the other colonies into rebellion too. They'll think we're tyrants." Dong Hyun raised his hand for silence. "We have options. Military action is one. But first, we try diplomacy. If they won't listen to reason, then we move to harder measures." He looked across the table at an older man in civilian clothes. Hyunwoo had been a diplomat for 30 years. He was good at talking to people, at finding peaceful solutions. He was also from Nova Sol originally. He'd grown up there before moving to Earth. "Hyunwoo, you know these people. Can you negotiate with them?" Hyunwoo looked tired. "I can try, Admiral. But from what Captain Taeho reported, Governor Mi-sun sounds determined. She won't give up easily." "You have 1 week," Dong Hyun said. "Make them understand what they're facing." 3 days later, Hyunwoo's ship arrived at Nova Sol. The planet looked the same as always, but everything felt different. The orbital defense grid was active, weapons tracking his ship. They let him through, but he could feel them watching. Governor Mi-sun met him at the spaceport. They had known each other long ago when they were both young. Now they stood on opposite sides of a conflict that could kill millions. "Hyunwoo, I heard they sent you." Mi-sun smiled sadly. "They think you can convince me because we're both from here." "I'm here because I don't want to see this planet destroyed," Hyunwoo said. "Please, Mi-sun, come to the negotiation table. Let's find a solution." They talked for 3 days. Hyunwoo listened to all of Mi-sun's complaints, and she was right about many things. Earth did take too much in taxes. The colonies didn't have enough voice in government. They were treated like children, not partners. "I understand your frustration," Hyunwoo said on the second day. "I really do. But independence isn't the answer. If you break away, Earth will have to respond. And then other colonies will try the same thing. We'll have civil war. Millions will die." Mi-sun stood at the window of her office, looking out at New Busan. Maybe that's the price of freedom. Our ancestors on Earth fought wars for independence too. America fought Britain. Korea fought for freedom from Japan. Was that wrong? Those were different situations. Were they? Mi-sun turned to face him. Or do empires always say that when people want to be free? Hyunwoo had no good answer for that. On the third day, Mi-sun showed him something that made his blood run cold. She took him to the military base outside the city. There, he saw weapons being unloaded from Vrelian ships. Lots of weapons. Enough to fight a real war. The Vrelians have promised to recognize our independence, Mi-sun said. They'll trade with us, protect us. We're not alone in this. The Vrelians are using you, Hyunwoo said. They want to weaken Earth. Once they've done that, do you think they'll care about Nova Sol? You're a tool to them, nothing more. Maybe. But right now, they're better friends than Earth has been. Colonel Jae-sung, Mi-sun's military advisor, walked up to them. He was a hard man, a soldier who had trained with Earth's military before coming to Nova Sol. Governor, we have reports. Earth is moving the 6th Fleet. They're preparing for military action. Mi-sun looked at Hyunwoo. Is that true? Hyunwoo couldn't lie. Yes. If negotiations fail, they'll come. Please, Mi-sun, don't let it get that far. Then Earth should accept our independence. You know they can't do that. Mi-sun's face hardened. Then we'll fight. We have defenses, we have allies, and we have something Earth doesn't have anymore. We have the will to fight for our freedom. Hyunwoo left Nova Sol knowing he had failed. As his ship lifted off, he saw more Vrelian transports landing. The colony was preparing for war. Back on Earth, he reported to Admiral Dong-hyun. The Admiral listened without interrupting. When Hyunwoo finished, Dong-hyun nodded slowly. You did your best. No one can say otherwise. The Admiral stood up. Now we move to the next phase. Military action? Hyunwoo asked, his stomach tight. A blockade first. We'll cut them off from trade. Maybe that will make them reconsider. And we'll send a message to the Vrelians. If they interfere, we'll consider it an act of war. Hyunwoo felt relieved. A blockade was better than open warfare. Maybe there was still time to avoid the worst. But that night, Admiral Dong-hyun attended another meeting. This one was secret, in a room deep underground. Only 5 people were there. They all had the highest security clearance in Earth's government. Project Nightfall is ready, said a woman in a white coat. She was a scientist, one of the people who worked on Earth's most secret weapons. We can deploy it whenever you give the order. Tell me again how it works, Dong-hyun said. The scientist brought up a hologram. It showed a planet surrounded by small devices. We place gravity well generators in orbit. When activated simultaneously, they create a quantum singularity. The planet gets pulled into a dimensional space outside normal reality. It doesn't explode, it doesn't break apart, it simply stops existing in our universe. And the people? Dong-hyun asked. Gone. Instantly. They won't feel anything. One of the politicians at the table looked sick. This is genocide. If anyone finds out, no one will find out, Dong-hyun interrupted. We'll erase all records, remove Nova Sol from every star map. Say it was destroyed by an accident with Vrelian technology. The Vrelians won't contradict us because they'll be terrified we might do the same to their worlds. And if word gets out anyway? Another officer asked. Then every colony in human space will know what happens when you defy Earth. They'll know that we have the power and the will to erase entire worlds. Rebellion will become unthinkable. The room was silent for a long time. Finally, the senior politician spoke. 1 planet? 4 million people? Or a civil war that could kill billions and destroy everything we've built? God forgive us, but I vote yes. One by one, they all voted. Yes. 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 Admiral Dong-hyun was the last. He thought about his children, his grandchildren, the future of humanity. 1 planet or the Empire? Yes, he said quietly. He pressed a button on his desk. A secure message went out to a ship waiting in deep space. A black ship that didn't appear on any official fleet roster. A ship commanded by a woman named Su Jin, who led the best black operations team in Earth's military. The message was simple. Project Nightfall is authorized. Proceed when ready. Dong Hyun sat alone in his office after everyone left. He poured himself a drink and looked out at Earth below. The blue planet that had sent humans to the stars. The homeworld that now had to make impossible choices. He thought about Nova Sol, the people there celebrating their independence, the children playing in the streets, the families having dinner together. In a few weeks they would all be gone, and he would be the man who gave the order. History would never know. The records would be erased. Nova Sol would become a ghost story, a mystery, a planet that vanished. But Dong Hyun would know. He would carry it until the day he died. He finished his drink and prepared the next orders. The Sixth Fleet would move to Nova Sol in force. They would demand surrender, and when the colony refused, they would serve as the distraction while Su Jin's team did the real work, the work that no one would ever know about. The silent verdict moved through space like a ghost. It was painted black, covered in special materials that made it invisible to most scanners. Inside, Commander Su Jin checked her equipment one more time. Everything had to be perfect. There would be no second chance. "Commander, we're approaching the deployment zone," said her pilot. "Still no sign they've detected us." Su Jin nodded. Good. Nova Sol's orbital defenses were watching the Sixth Fleet, not looking for a single stealth ship coming from a different direction. That's what made this plan work. While everyone watched the obvious threat, the real danger slipped in quietly. She looked at the equipment stored in the cargo bay. 12 gravity well generators, each one the size of a small car. They looked simple, but the science inside them was terrifying. Her briefing officer had explained it, though she didn't fully understand. Something about creating artificial black holes that didn't actually destroy matter, just moved it somewhere else, somewhere outside normal space. "How long until we're in position?" she asked. 2 hours, Commander." Su Jin went to her quarters and sat down. She tried not to think about what she was about to do. She was a soldier. Soldiers followed orders. That's what she told herself. But this felt different from any mission she'd done before. 4 million people. That's how many lived on Nova Sol. 4 million men, women, and children who would be gone in an instant. They wouldn't know. They wouldn't suffer. But they would stop existing. She thought about her own childhood. Growing up in Seoul on Earth, playing in parks, going to school, having dreams about the future. The people down on Nova Sol had those same dreams, but they had chosen rebellion. They had chosen to break away from Earth, and sometimes, choices had terrible consequences. Meanwhile, Commodore Taeho stood on the bridge of the Righteous Dawn, now the flagship of the Sixth Fleet. Around his ship, 200 other vessels waited in formation. It was an impressive sight, enough firepower to conquer a dozen planets. "Sir, we're receiving a message from Nova Sol," Bora said. "It's Governor Mi-sun. Put it on screen." Mi-sun appeared, standing in what looked like a military command center. Behind her, Su Jin could see Colonel Jae-sung and other officers. They all looked ready for war. "Commodore Taeho, I see Earth sent their fleet after all. Quite impressive. Are you here to attack us?" "I'm here to give you one final chance," Taeho said. He had been given a script, words written by Admiral Dong Hyun. "Surrender now. Accept Earth's authority. You'll be pardoned. No one else has to die." Mi-sun laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Pardoned? Like criminals? We've committed no crime except wanting to be free. You've armed yourselves with illegal weapons. You've made treaties with foreign powers without authorization. You've declared rebellion against the legitimate government. Those are crimes, Governor. Then we're guilty, and we'll stay guilty, because we'd rather be free criminals than obedient slaves." Mi-sun leaned closer to the camera. "Tell your Admiral Dong Hyun that Nova Sol will never surrender. If you attack, we'll defend ourselves. And win or lose, 12 other colonies are watching. They'll see what Earth really is." The transmission ended. Taeho felt sick. He had just delivered the words that sealed the fate of this planet. And the worst part? Mi-sun didn't know what was really coming. "Sir, should we move into attack position?" his tactical officer asked. "Yes, begin the blockade, but don't fire unless fired upon." Tejo needed to buy time. Time to think of another way. Time to find a solution that didn't involve what he knew was happening in the shadows, because Admiral Dong-hyun had told him the truth. 3 days ago, in a private communication, the Admiral had explained Project Nightfall. Tejo had begged him not to do it. He'd argued. He'd even threatened to resign his commission. "This is genocide," Tejo had said. "This is survival," Dong-hyun had replied. "I don't expect you to understand, Commodore. I don't expect you to forgive me. But you will follow your orders. You will keep the fleet in position and you will serve as the distraction we need." And so here Tejo was, following orders like a good soldier, while somewhere in the dark, Sujin prepared to erase 4 million people. On Nova Sol, Nari was fixing a broken water pump in the residential district. She was an engineer, good with machines and systems. She didn't care much about politics. She just wanted to do her job and live her life. But lately it was hard not to care. The military was everywhere. They'd built weapons platforms near the schools. They'd started training civilians for combat. The whole planet felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible. Nari had tried to speak up at a town meeting last week. She'd said that maybe they should reconsider. Maybe independence wasn't worth a war. The room had gone silent. People had stared at her like she'd said something horrible. "You sound like an Earth sympathizer," someone had said. "I'm not. I just don't want people to die." But no one listened. They were too excited about being free, about defying the big empire. They didn't understand what empires did to people who defied them. That night, Nari got a message. She had been selected for an off-world supply run. They needed someone to go to the trading station in the next system and pick up medical supplies. It was random selection, just her turn in the rotation. She packed her bag, said goodbye to her family, and took the shuttle up to the supply ship. As they left orbit, she looked down at Nova Sol, her home. It looked so peaceful from space, so beautiful. She didn't know she would never see it again. Sujin's team worked quickly and quietly. They released the gravity well generators at precise points around Nova Sol. The devices drifted into position, powered down, looking like space debris. No one would notice them unless they were looking very carefully. "All units in position, Commander," her technical officer reported. "Ready to activate on your command." Sujin took a deep breath. She had one job. Wait for the final authorization code from Admiral Dong-hyun, then push the button that would activate all 12 generators simultaneously. The code came 6 hours later. Just 3 words in encrypted text. "Execute Project Nightfall." Sujin's hand shook as she reached for the control panel. She thought about stopping, about refusing the order, about warning Nova Sol what was about to happen, but she didn't. She was a soldier. She followed orders. She pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to bend around Nova Sol. The gravity well generators created 12 points of massive gravitational force, all pulling toward a single point. The planet began to collapse inward, not physically breaking apart, but folding into itself like paper being crumpled. The quantum singularity opened. A tear in space-time, a doorway to nowhere. Nova Sol fell through it. On the righteous dawn, every sensor went crazy. Alarms screamed. The viewing screen showed something impossible. Nova Sol was there 1 second and gone the next. Not destroyed. Not exploded, just absent. Where the planet had been, there was nothing but empty space. What happened? Bora whispered. Where did it go? Tejo couldn't speak. He felt his legs go weak. He grabbed the command chair to keep from falling. Around the bridge, crew members stared in horror. Some were crying. One officer ran to the bathroom and vomited. 4 million people. Gone in an instant. "Sir, we're getting a message from Admiral Dong-hyun," Bora said, her voice shaking. "He's ordering us to return to Earth immediately." Tejo nodded numbly. What else could he do? Nari was in the medical storage room of the supply ship when it happened. She felt something strange, like a pressure change in her ears. The ship's sensors beeped. The captain came on the intercom. "We're detecting a massive gravitational anomaly. Everyone stay calm." Nari ran to a viewing port and looked back toward Nova Sol, but the planet wasn't there anymore. Just empty space where her home should be. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She pressed her face against the viewing port, looking for any sign, any trace. But there was nothing. Nova Sol was gone. Her family, her friends, her whole world. 4 million people erased. The emergency meeting happened in the middle of the night. Every member of Earth's Security Council was there, along with Admiral Dong Hyun and a team of information specialists. They had a problem to solve, and they had to solve it fast. "Story needs to be simple," said one of the information specialists. "Simple stories are easier to believe and harder to disprove." Admiral Dong Hyun stood at the front of the room. He looked older than he had a week ago. There were dark circles under his eyes, but his voice was steady. "What do you propose?" "We say that Nova Sol was experimenting with Vrelian technology. Something went wrong. A catastrophic accident destroyed the planet. We blame the Vrelians for giving them dangerous equipment they couldn't handle safely." "Will the Vrelians contradict us?" asked a council member. "No." Dong Hyun pulled up a screen showing a recorded message. "I've already spoken with the Vrelian High Command. I explained what we did. I explained that we're willing to do it again if anyone threatens Earth's security. They're terrified. They've agreed to support our story and cut all ties with rebel colonies." The room was quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. Earth had become something new, something willing to erase entire worlds to maintain control, and their enemies knew it. "What about the survivors?" someone asked. "The people who were off-planet when it happened? There are approximately 3,000 survivors scattered across various ships and stations. We're tracking all of them. We'll need to control the narrative before they can spread different stories." A woman named Hee-Rin, who worked in psychological operations, spoke up. "We can't silence 3,000 people permanently. Some of them will talk, some won't believe our story." "Then we make them seem crazy," Dong Hyun said coldly. "We say they're suffering from trauma. Grief makes people irrational. If they claim Earth destroyed Nova Sol on purpose, we say it's a conspiracy theory born from pain and loss. Most people will believe us over a few traumatized survivors. It took 2 days to prepare everything. They rewrote the official records. They created false reports about Vrelian experimental weapons. They even manufactured evidence, fake communications, between Nova Sol and Vrelian scientists discussing dangerous technology tests. Then they released the statement. It went out to every colony, every news service, every official channel in human space. It is with deep sorrow that Earth announces the loss of Nova Sol colony. A catastrophic accident occurred during unauthorized testing of experimental technology provided by the Vrelian Confederacy. The planet suffered a complete gravitational collapse. All 4 million inhabitants are presumed lost. Earth mourns this tragedy and reminds all colonies of the dangers of unauthorized foreign technology. The Vrelian Confederacy has expressed their condolences and accepted responsibility for providing unsafe equipment. The news spread fast. Across human space, people reacted with shock and grief. But they believed the story. Why wouldn't they? Earth wouldn't lie about something so terrible. Governments didn't erase their own colonies. The Vrelian Confederacy released their own statement, carefully worded to support Earth's version while not quite admitting guilt. They announced new policies about technology exports and expressed sympathy for the victims. The other colonies that had been thinking about independence went very quiet. Some of their leaders received private messages from Earth, messages that contained star maps with certain planets marked. Messages that said nothing directly but implied everything. The threat was clear. Defy us, and your world could vanish too. On the righteous dawn, Tae-ho sat in his quarters and drank. He'd been drinking a lot since they returned to Earth. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw it. The planet folding into itself, disappearing into nothing. Bora knocked on his door. She looked as bad as he felt. None of the crew had recovered from what they'd witnessed. "Sir, Admiral Dong Hyun wants to see you." "Tell him I'm sick." He said it's not a request. Tae-ho followed her to the Admiral's office. Dong Hyun was standing by the window looking out at the city below. He didn't turn around when Tae-ho entered. "You're drinking too much, Commodore." "I saw 4 million people die, sir. I think I've earned a few drinks." "They didn't die, they were relocated." Tae-ho laughed bitterly. "Is that what you're calling it? Relocated? They don't exist anymore." They exist somewhere. Just not here. Dong-hyun finally turned around. I need you to understand something, Taeho. What we did was necessary. If Nova Soul had succeeded, we'd be fighting a civil war right now. Billions would die instead of millions. You're a soldier. You understand math. I understand genocide, sir. Call it what you want, but it's done. And now we need people like you to help maintain the peace. The colonies need to see that rebellion is pointless. You'll give speeches. You'll visit colonies and remind them of Earth's strength and protection. You want me to lie for you. I want you to do your duty. Or I can find someone else and you can spend the rest of your life drowning in a bottle. Your choice. Taeho wanted to refuse. He wanted to tell the truth, to expose what Earth had done. But he was tired. So tired. And Dong-hyun was right about one thing. It was done. Nothing could bring Nova Soul back. Yes, sir, he said quietly. Dong-hyun handed him a data pad. Here's your schedule. First stop is the colony on Kepler 62F. They've been making noise about more independence. You'll explain what happened to Nova Soul and why they should be grateful for Earth's protection. After Taeho left, Dong-hyun sat alone in his office. He pulled out a bottle from his desk drawer. Expensive whiskey he'd been saving for a special occasion. He poured himself a glass. There was a photo on his desk. His granddaughter, smiling at the camera. She was 6 years old. In the photo, she was holding a toy spaceship. He drank the whiskey and wondered what kind of universe she would grow up in. One where her grandfather had saved humanity's empire by committing an act of horror. Would she be proud? Would she be ashamed? Would she ever know? Probably not. The secret was sealed. Only a handful of people knew the truth, and they would all take it to their graves. Meanwhile, Nari floated in the medical bay of a refugee ship. She hadn't eaten in 3 days, hadn't spoken. The doctors were worried about her, but they couldn't help. How do you heal someone whose entire world was erased? Other survivors were there with her. 3,000 people spread across 50 different ships and stations. They were being gathered together, brought to a processing center on Earth where they could receive help and start new lives. But Nari didn't want a new life. She wanted her old one back. She wanted to call her mother. She wanted to visit her brother. She wanted to walk through the streets of New Busan one more time. A counselor came to talk to her, a kind woman who spoke softly and offered sympathy. She explained what Earth was saying. An accident. Brilliant technology. A tragic loss. That's not what happened, Nari said. It was the first time she'd spoken in days. Grief can make us look for other explanations, the counselor said gently. It's normal to feel angry, to want someone to blame, but sometimes terrible things just happen. Nari looked at the woman. She could see that the counselor believed what she was saying. She really thought this was just grief talking. Nari almost laughed. They were going to get away with it. Earth was going to erase 4 million people and call it an accident, and everyone would believe them. You're right, Nari said finally. I'm just upset. I'm not thinking clearly. The counselor smiled, relieved. That's understandable. We'll help you through this. You'll heal in time. But Nari knew she would never heal. And she knew something else too. She wouldn't forget. Somewhere, somehow, she would find proof of what really happened. She would collect the stories of the other survivors. She would document everything, because maybe Earth could erase a planet. But they couldn't erase memory. Not if someone fought to preserve it. That night, lying in her bunk, Nari started a private file on her datapad. She titled it simply, The Truth About Nova Soul. She began writing everything she remembered, every detail, every person, every street, every building. If her world was gone, at least she could keep it alive in memory. And someday, somehow, people would know what really happened. Someday the truth would come out. 15 years passed. The galaxy changed in small ways and big ways. New colonies were founded. Old grudges faded. But the memory of Nova Soul became something different. It became a cautionary tale, a warning, a mystery. Some people said it was a ghost planet that you could still see sometimes, appearing in empty space for just a moment before vanishing. Some said the Vrelians had stolen it somehow. Some said it never existed at all, that it was all a hoax. But 3,000 people knew the truth, and they never stopped remembering. Teiho was now Admiral Teiho, retired. He lived alone in a small apartment in Tokyo. Every morning he woke up and looked at the star map on his wall. It was an old map from before Nova Sol disappeared. On the map, the planet was still there, a small dot marked with its coordinates. Earth's official maps didn't show it anymore. That spot in space was marked as empty, a stellar anomaly zone that ships avoided, but Teiho kept his old map. He needed to remember. He spent most of his days drinking. His friends from the military had stopped calling years ago. His family barely spoke to him. He was the admiral who had overseen the blockade of Nova Sol. People whispered that he'd failed somehow, that he should have prevented the tragedy, if only they knew. If only they knew he'd watched it happen, that he'd been part of it. One morning his doorbell rang. He almost didn't answer, but something made him walk to the door and open it. A woman stood there. She was in her 40s, with gray in her hair despite her age. She looked tired but determined. In her hands she held a data storage device. "Admiral Teiho, my name is Nari. I'm from Nova Sol. I need to talk to you." Teiho's heart started beating faster. He looked up and down the hallway, then pulled her inside quickly. "You shouldn't be here. If they know you're talking to me, I don't care anymore. I've spent 15 years documenting everything. Every survivor's story, every piece of evidence, every inconsistency in Earth's official story. But I need more. I need someone from Earth's military to tell the truth." Teiho sat down heavily. "What truth?" "Nova Sol was destroyed by an accident. Everyone knows that," Nari smiled sadly. "Don't lie to me, Admiral. I was there. I saw the gravity well generators. I watched my planet get erased. I know what Earth did. You can't prove anything. I can prove enough. I have testimony from other survivors who saw the same thing. I have technical analysis showing that Vrelian technology couldn't have caused what happened. I have communications records showing that the official timeline doesn't match reality." She held up the data device. "I have everything except one thing. A confession from someone who was there on Earth's side." Teiho looked at her for a long time. Then he stood and walked to his kitchen. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. "If I tell you what happened, they'll kill us both. You know that, right? I've been ready to die for 15 years. Every morning I wake up and wonder why I survived when everyone I loved died. Maybe this is why. Maybe I was meant to survive so someone could tell the truth." Teiho drank his whiskey in one gulp. Then he started talking. He told her everything. About Project Nightfall. About Admiral Donghyun's orders. About watching Nova Sol disappear into quantum space. About the cover-up. Nari recorded it all. When he finished, she was crying, but her hands were steady. "Thank you," she said. "What are you going to do with this?" "Release it everywhere, every colony, every news service, every communication channel I can access. They can't silence all of us." 2 weeks later, Teiho received a message. It was from someone named Soo-jin. She wanted to meet him. The message included a code that only Black operations personnel would know. They met in a park at midnight. Soo-jin looked different from how Teiho remembered. She'd been a strong, confident commander 15 years ago. Now she looked haunted, broken. "I heard you talk to Nari," Soo-jin said. "I heard you told her the truth. Are you here to kill me?" "No, I'm here to help." Soo-jin pulled out her own data device. "I've been carrying this for 5 years. Technical specifications for Project Nightfall, deployment records, command authorization codes, everything. Why now? Because I can't live with it anymore. Every night I dream about pushing that button. 4 million people, gone because I followed orders." She looked at him. "We were soldiers. We thought that meant something. We thought following orders was honor, but there's no honor in genocide." 3 days later, Nari released everything. The testimony from survivors, Teiho's confession, Soo-jin's technical data, all of it released simultaneously to 500 different colonies, to news services, to public forums, to anyone who would listen. Earth's government tried to shut it down. They claimed it was fake, a conspiracy theory, enemy propaganda. But the evidence was too detailed, too specific, too real. Across human space, people watched the recordings. They read the documents. They saw the proof. And slowly, terribly, they understood. Earth had erased an entire planet. 4 million people deleted from existence, and then they'd lied about it for 15 years. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Protests erupted on Earth. Colonies demanded investigations. Some declared independence, daring Earth to erase them too. The United Earth government fractured. Politicians resigned. Military officers refused orders. The empire that had been held together by fear and lies began to fall apart. Admiral Dong Hyun was arrested. The trial was broadcast across human space. He sat in the courtroom, looking old and tired while prosecutors presented the evidence against him. The gravity well generators, the authorization codes, the cover-up. When asked if he had anything to say, Dong Hyun stood slowly. He looked at the camera, at all the people watching across the galaxy. I did what I believed was necessary to preserve humanity's unity. I gave the order to erase Nova Sol, and I would do it again because the alternative was civil war. Billions dead instead of millions. That was the choice I faced. History will judge whether I chose correctly. He sat down. The courtroom was silent, but Taeho, watching from his apartment, knew the truth. History wouldn't judge. History would remember, and that was worse. Dong Hyun would be remembered forever as the man who erased a world. No justification would change that. The trial ended with Dong Hyun sentenced to life imprisonment. But many people thought that wasn't enough. How do you punish someone for erasing 4 million lives? What sentence could ever be adequate? Meanwhile, scientists were studying the data Su Jin had provided. The quantum singularity, the dimensional displacement. And they discovered something incredible. Nova Sol still existed. It was trapped in quantum space, frozen in time. The planet and everyone on it were preserved in a dimensional bubble outside normal reality. Theoretically, it could be retrieved, but the technology needed was decades away, maybe centuries. Nari stood in a laboratory at one of the free colonies, looking at a simulation of Nova Sol in quantum space. There it was, her home still existing but unreachable. Her family was there, frozen in the moment of erasure. Not dead, not alive, somewhere in between. We're working on retrieval methods, said the scientist next to her. Maybe in 30 years, maybe 50. But we'll bring them back. Will they remember? Nari asked. Will they know that 15 years passed while they were frozen? We don't know. Time works differently in quantum space. To them it might feel like no time passed at all. Nari touched the screen showing her planet. 15 years of her life spent fighting to reveal the truth. And now that truth was out. Earth's empire was collapsing. Colonies were free. Justice was being pursued, but it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Because 4 million people were still trapped in quantum space and she was still alone. Taeho died 6 months after the trial. The official cause was heart failure, but everyone knew the truth. He'd drunk himself to death. At his funeral, there were only a dozen people. Nari was one of them. She stood by his grave after everyone else left. Thank you, she said to the stone. You gave me what I needed. You told the truth when it mattered. The wind blew cold. Earth was different now. The government was restructured. Power was distributed. Colonies had real representation. The United Earth government had become the Confederation of Human Worlds. Equal, democratic, built on truth instead of lies. But the cost had been terrible, and Nova Sol remained a ghost. Existing but not existing, there but not there. In schools across human space, children learned about Nova Sol. They learned what happened when power became absolute. They learned the importance of speaking truth to power. They learned that some choices once made could never be undone. Nari became the keeper of Nova Sol's memory. She gave lectures. She wrote books. She maintained the archive of survivor testimony. And every year, on the anniversary of the erasure, she stood in front of a memorial and read the names. 4 million names. It took weeks to read them all. But she did it. Every single one, because someone had to remember. Someone had to say their names. Someone had to prove that they had existed, that they had lived, that they had mattered. The planet that defied Earth no longer appeared on any official star map, but it appeared on the maps that mattered. The maps of human conscience. The maps of historical truth. The maps carried by those who refused to forget.